Now we are going to copy over the hair groom from the neck, and we're going to rename this as leg groom, and we have to set up this to our density attribute, and then we can get rid of most of the history. We'll quickly interrupt this so it doesn't have to re-evaluate it all over again, so we can get rid of all of it. I just want to keep the skin connection over there. Let's quickly activate this again and see if it comes through. Yeah, and this is our hair, as you can see. It seems to take the memory lines, but you can see there's a couple of stuff going wrong. The hair is too long, and there are guides standing on all different kind of It seems to be a little bit better, but still you end up with a lot of artifacts and very unclean forms where it goes intersecting with each other and doing crisscrossing, which we want to avoid. And here we'll try to set up a length node where I cut off the length based on the active area attribute, or the memory line attribute in this case. And we will set up the memory line as the blend mask and see if that does something on standard settings. And it looks pretty clean. It looks like what we want to achieve with this. Visible from the front look of it. So when I use a link node there, I often like to fade it out a little bit more, so I will go with randomized settings. I will adjust the lift a little bit more. Sometimes it helps to go with levels above 1, so we have more lifting in general here. Now we have to cache that out another time and update it in order to receive our update. And I will also increase the lines a little bit more so they are more visible. And this is the result of that. It takes some time to evaluate. You can see the link node on standard settings is still causing quite visible lines. Trying different interpolation methods and see if I can get a better result with the extrude setting here. It's very adaptive to your guide count and interpolation in general, so it's always worth to check that and test that out. So here we also randomize the length overall in these areas, so it's not directly cutting it off at 0. It's basically blending it with randomized values all the way. I'm still trying to find the perfect value here in the influence and guide count. But yeah, it's sometimes tricky. It can be very dependent on the scene scale as well. So usually these settings are different for each character. And this is it with linear blend settings and the new length attribute applied. For some productions, you have a different project scale, for example, then all these values will not be the standard values that you know. So it's always good to test which value gives you the best result. So I will copy this graph over from the neck and apply it on the leg room. And then I will also copy over one of our conversion guide grooms. And what I'm planning to do is I'm planning to outcast the memory line setup that we have into like an own groom node. So we can basically blend that over similar to what we did with the head groom. And this will be beneficial if you're working with CFX, for example, because you don't want to have that high amounts of guides on the whole legs, but rather just where the clump areas are. And I will just bring this over from our other grooms. And here, this is what we just copied over from the guide groom. So it's like the exact same setup. I will copy over the thickness as well, so we have the same thickness. And also the other attributes from the hair gen that we had previously set up. So yeah, and here you can see it only grows hair in these regions. I will blend it out a little bit more, and then I will use the fit function in order to extend it. This is a good method in order to extend attributes in general. Just add a blur, and after the blur, a fit function where you just extend either the white or black regions. So I just put this into the same groom because it's easier to control and faster to iterate than to always swap between swap and object level. Also for CFX, better to have an overview later on. So here we are going to try out some different settings, and this is something that works better than what we had before. Quickly disabled to see if the length attribute does something and what exactly it does. But it looks like with it activated, it in general looks better. From here, it looks a little bit sparse as it is right now, so I will increase the density. From here, we can create our output nodes, one for the guides and one for the skin. And whatever is not in there based on the memory attribute will be driven by this attribute here. I like to put important and we have to cache that out again. I will go even lower. I think this will be enough for our legs here. And we can make the direction directly here and just delete this because we already have that in the other sub. This is at the moment just the interpolated groom, so we can increase the influence radius because we have less guides. This will give us just a very interpolated version here, but this is what we're going for in this case. So we can template the guide. When it comes to the character, we will fix that later on. And we can see that it's not picking it up correctly yet, or it doesn't like the values yet. So you need to put higher values in there so you can see the result. Sometimes when one guide color RGB is not enough, I will put multiple ones after each other. But yeah, this is too much right now. So you want to find the correct value. It's sometimes a combination of all three of them. But yeah, be very careful. You don't want it. And before that, I will put bend nodes to add a little bit of variation on each single hair so the clumps are not facing the same directionality. So this is what you want to avoid. You don't want all of your clumps facing the same directionality, so it's always useful to add a bend before the clump nodes or a randomized function. I will also use the fractal clumping here to break it up into finer parts. It looks like my viewport here stopped to evaluate. Houdini does that sometimes, so in order to avoid that, you can always save and restart Houdini or restart a new viewport. And here restarting. I really like the shapes that you can see on the hands. You have a certain pattern going on there, which I really like. So I will put these 2 in a row. And yeah, I really like what's happening at the toes. These are very beautiful shapes and patterns that I want to keep here. With the active area, and we will set this to our memory lines in order to bring them in. So we only need to exchange the object merge here and the skin merge over here. Area, we could put this to the memory lines. So I don't want to go through all of the parts again and rename everything. So alternatively, I will just create an attribute wrangle and rename it and make the connections here. So I will set the active area to the equal amount of the memory lines, and that will do the trick. The hair clump doesn't seem to do much. I'm a bit unsure if that is because of the viewport bugs that I had earlier on or because of the settings, so I will just drop another hair clump into the space and see if that works by default or not. And it seems to create some clump patterns, which is good. So it can't be the viewport that is broken. So I will just set up some basic values, experiment with see how that looks like in combination. This is currently a little bit too long, but yeah, you can blend it based on the tightness here, for example. So higher values will blend it more visibly, while lower values will blend it more with the original groom. And I like the definition of the extrude setting. You can really look a lot into the groom, which is like, if you compare that to the reference has the same shapes there. But yeah, I can't decide between the extruded setting and the linear setting, so I will create a hair clump of both of them and then I will compare what I like more in combination. And the downsides of the linear blend is that it looks too soft. You can't really look as much into it as you can, like versus the extruded version. And I'm trying to tweak the settings a little bit more to achieve the same effect, but always looks a little bit too soft for my liking. Like the reference is a very weird one to begin with. So something that is more extreme might be more beneficial here. We'll also try to see how that I just found an old length note from the next system that I just got rid of, and now I'm trying to tweak it again to look more like the reference. Clamp patterns are one of the most difficult parts to achieve in grooming, and there are so many techniques that you could use. It depends really on the character and how the patterns look like. But yeah, for this one, this gives me quite a good flexible result. Yeah, it will take some special treatment in CFX. That's the only downside to this approach. The tips and not the roots, and try to interpolate it more and come up more with a combination or mix of those two versions, just in order to see if that gives me a more realistic result.